Russell Long. Russell Long's full name was Royal Russell Long. He was a 49-year-old long-haul truck driver that had a history of abusing women. Russell was also a trained meat cutter and knew how to dispose of bodies. A prison inmate claimed that Russell told him that if you cut up a body enough, you can shove the pieces into rat holes. Russell had a daughter. His daughter said that when she was young, he sexually abused her for a number of years. She also said that sometimes he would take her on the road with him during his long-haul trips, and that while on these trips, on numerous occasions, she witnessed her father try to convince young girls to get into the cab of his truck, and that he often used stuffed animals to get the girls' attention, and that he purposely targeted carnivals and fairs. On September 19, 1984, at around 1 p.m., Russell picked up two girls that were hitchhiking in Casper, Wyoming. One of the girls was 16 years old and the other girl was 13 years old. He took them to his house in Evansville, Wyoming, so they could eat and shower. After they ate their food, he told them that if they did sexual favors for him, he would give them $100. When they refused his offer, he got really angry and started beating them. Then he used wire coat hangers to bind their wrists and ankles. Then he sexually assaulted the 13-year-old girl, whose name was Sharon. When he was done sexually assaulting the 13-year-old girl, he fell asleep. While he was sleeping, the 16-year-old girl took her only chance to escape, and she made it out of his house and to the neighbor's house. She told his neighbor that her and her friend had been kidnapped by the man that lived next door and that her friend was still inside his house. The neighbor then called the police, but while they were waiting for the police to arrive, they heard Russell speed away in his car with Sharon. And by the time the police got there, it was too late. Russell and the 13-year-old girl disappeared into the night. Russell Long was now a wanted man. He spent nearly a week on the run, and then he was arrested in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but the 13-year-old girl Sharon was not with him. New Mexico police then transported him back to Wyoming authorities. The police told him that they believed that he killed Sharon and that they just wanted to know where her body was. He said that he did not kill her and that he dropped her off in Cheyenne, Wyoming, but he couldn't remember if she got on a truck or on a bus, but that he knew it was headed towards Dallas, Texas. The police did not believe him and they were pretty sure that she was dead, but Sharon's family kept the hope and belief that she was still alive somewhere. With no body found and the victim's family pressing the idea that she was still alive, the district attorney's office did not think they would be able to convict Russell of Sharon's murder. In January 1985, Russell pled guilty to 2 counts of kidnapping and was sentenced to 2 life sentences. After he was arrested, police departments around the country started checking their cold case files to see if he could be responsible for any other crimes. 2 of the main law enforcement agencies interested in him were the Rawlings Police Department and the Oklahoma City Police Department. He lived in Evansville, Wyoming, which was only 125 miles from Rawlings, where 4 young females went missing in the summer of 1974. Only 2 of the victims' bodies were found, and they both died from blunt force trauma to the head. On July 4th, 1974, 19-year-old Chrissy Gross and 19-year-old Charlene Brown disappeared from the annual Little Britches Rodeo in Rawlings, Wyoming. Chrissy Gross's remains were found outside of St. Clair, which is on the way to Evansville from Rawlings. On August 4th, 1974, 15-year-old Deborah Meyer disappeared from a movie theater in Rawlings. Later in August 1974, 10-year-old Jaylene Baker disappeared from the Carbon County Fair at the Rawlings Fairgrounds. 8 months later, her remains were found by a man walking his dog. In the 1980s, Russell was living in Oklahoma City. In September 1981, 13-year-old Charlotte Kinsey and her friend Cinda Pallett went missing from the Oklahoma State Fair. Russell actually admitted he was at the Oklahoma State Fair the night they disappeared, but he said that he never met them and that he didn't know what happened to them. But 2 young boys that were friends with the girls and at the carnival with them that night identified Russell as the man they say offered the girls jobs carrying stuffed animals from his truck. The boys said that he had on a yellow carnival ID badge that said his name was Don Corey, and the picture of the man on the ID badge looked like Russell. After this incident, The carnival worker Don Corey that the ID badge actually belonged to was tracked down and he was arrested, but he was later released when it was proved that his ID badge was stolen from him previously at another carnival, and during the time of Christy and Cinda's disappearance, he was at work at a carnival in another state. That same month, 16-year-old Susan Thompson and 15-year-old Cheryl Vaughn also disappeared from the Oklahoma State Fair, or possibly a nearby nightclub that they didn't tell their parents they were going to, a few miles away from where their car was found. The police searched Russell's truck and sprayed the inside for traces of blood with luminol. The luminol lit up and showed the outline of two girls' bodies. They also found blonde hairs in the truck and in his house that an expert said were most likely Charlotte's hair. The district attorney felt they had enough evidence to charge him with the murders of Charlotte and Cinda. In October 1985, the evidence was presented in a preliminary hearing, but the judge ruled that key pieces of evidence were inadmissible and he dismissed the case against Russell, saying there wasn't enough evidence to go to trial. After that, he was never charged again for those two murders, and he was never charged with the other 4 disappearances or the other 2 murders. In November 1983, at 58 years old, he died from natural causes while serving his life sentences for kidnapping 13-year-old Sharon, who was never found, and her 16-year-old friend. Before Russell died, he never admitted to killing anyone and never gave any information about the location of any of the missing girls' bodies. Even though he was given 2 life sentences for kidnapping, Royal Russell Long was never actually ever charged or convicted of murder, but it is believed that he for sure killed at least 1 young girl and possibly 7 other young girls, and maybe even more.